Testing, testing. And I mean it, because I just did it yesterday. I do it every Saturday. Whoever thought that sticking a swab up our noses would become such an ordinary part of life? Just like, like my grandmother used to go get her hair set weekly. Now I've got this Q-tip up my nose in 15 seconds and, the whole thing and the little solution, and then you set the timer and then you wait for that little red line to either show up or not show up. And that's become part of life. And although my heart always beats a little bit faster when the timer goes off and it's the moment of reckoning, my mind runs through in that quick second everything that I've done, everywhere I have gone, whether I was diligent enough or maybe where was I a little too careless. I decided I'm not going to worry about COVID so much today. Or where did I take very extraordinary care and in fact sacrifice in order to avoid groups of potentially infected people? This process, a very fast mental, emotional, and spiritual exercise, actually reminds me of the Puritans, who were instructed by their faith to engage in constant moral self-evaluation. Did I please the Lord? Have I sinned? This moral inventory is not unique to the Puritans. It's a practice in many religious and philosophical traditions. For instance, the Stoics did something very much like this, even if the judging deities and ancestors differ across time and traditions. Obviously, for the Puritans, it was a very Christian context, and their God was a very judging God who almost certainly didn't like you or didn't approve of you, meaning all of us. But these days, I know that the absence of that faint red line on my COVID test might be a false negative, and I might be walking around with the virus and not know it. And this is just a new kind of awareness that we've gained in the past year or so. Initially, we really trusted the tests. Now we know that a lot of them are false negatives, and so it goes. This is a whole moral anxiety that accompanies the medical anxiety that we live with. We're in an era of contagion awareness. So this has got me thinking about how attitudes are also contagious and paying closer attention to the way I feel and in fact how my body reacts when I'm around people when I'm around people at all, because for a long time I wasn't. None of us really could be. But when I'm around people who exude what pop psychology calls negativity or positivity. I'm sure you're aware that one is supposed to banish the first. The one as in people, are supposed to banish that first, negativity, and exude only positivity. And in fact, to make that one's orientation at all times, and you've seen the t-shirts, positive vibes only, right? You've seen it on your friends' Instagram feeds and stuff. But okay. There is no spiritual wellness or mental health to be had with binary thinking, positive vibes only, negative vibes only, or live in the pit of awareness of suffering and despair at all times. If we're constantly interrupting our own real, authentic emotions of sadness, grief, sorrow for the world, our experiences of suffering, in order to quickly replace them with positivity, we can be enacting a kind of amputation on ourselves, on our souls, and on the truth of our lives. Life is sad. Suffering is real. To be whole and well in mind, body, and spirit requires an ability to tolerate these realities and to allow reality to be reality. Whenever encounters between the human and the divine have been recounted across time in sacred stories and folk tales and so on, the spirit being never says good vibes only. They don't ever say that. They don't ever advise that. What they usually advise, this is cross-cultural, is courage, or reassured the human, the mortal, that all is well in the ultimate sense of things, which really is a very broad metaphysical kind of awareness that isn't shallow. But they have never advised, disallow a good portion of your honest response to the shock of being alive. It will go better with you if you do that. They don't ever say that. I even think about just like the traditional angel appearances in the Gospels. Be not afraid doesn't mean positive vibes only. You know, you get to have your feelings. You get to have consternation to the shock of being alive. I've been reading a biography of a Tibetan Buddhist monk's journey out of his monastery and into the life of the streets of India, and surprised, I'm not done with it, I'm kind of at the beginning, but I was surprised to find that even Yangyi Mingyur Rinpoche, after 36 years, his entire life in spiritual practice, in a monastery, in a life completely removed from ordinary stressors, found himself challenged with egotistical and judgmental negative thoughts pretty much the moment he was beyond the walls of his monastery. He decided to escape. He wanted to go away without telling anybody to experience the world. I was genuinely surprised and kind of discouraged by this because I thought, good Lord, if he's that bad at it after 36 years of spending all day in spiritual practice, what hope is there for me? But as I watch him as a reader use his practices to regain equilibrium in response to his circumstances, I realize, oh, it's the practice that you're all about. You get really good at the practice, not necessarily at the result. You get good at the practice. The book is called, by the way, In Love with the World. And he is always training and directing his mind to follow his breath. He's always returning to his breath. Anne Principe teaches this practice every morning at 7:30 a.m. Anne, are you here today? You are. Okay, is it 7:30 on Zoom? Yeah, so that's the practice that Anne is teaching, if that is a practice that interests you. Again, you don't get perfect, but you get really good at the practice. The practice of relationship is a central one in spiritual community, and it's important to remember that it is a practice. It is never completely learned. And I'd like to ask you to spend some time in the coming weeks just reflecting on that as we're coming back together in our program year, giving some consideration to the way that church is a place where we practice the spiritual discipline of right relation, of compassionate relation. It seems natural. Like, I don't need to practice that. I'm just like, I'm a friendly, nice person. It should be easy and natural. It's actually very demanding. And it's fine to say amen if you've experienced that. It's very demanding. Of late, it is obvious to anyone paying attention that it has been difficult for people strained by a pandemic and other serious concerns to find emotional equilibrium. I witnessed, it's everywhere, but I witnessed a few episodes of road rage this week. Really like scary, dangerous stuff. Not just somebody yelling out the window at somebody else, but driving crazy. And it made me aware that people are having a really hard time regulating themselves and their emotions. I was caught in atrocious traffic on Wednesday afternoon going into Cambridge, and I saw some people acting out like playing chicken coming into the Storrow Tunnel. And later I was discussing how frightening that was with someone, and they reminded me, the Orange Line is shut down. And so this is creating extra traffic in a region where traffic is already really, really bad and stressful. So sometimes you can identify what somebody's going through, and a lot of the time we can't, because we're always going through something. And we have all been going through a lot lately. So toxic positivity feels for some like a safe haven to turn to, a land of niceness and kindness where, as Dorothy put it before she landed in Oz, there isn't any trouble. I'm sorry, Dorothy, there's always trouble. You will know the purveyors of toxic positivity by their cliches. They love to spout slogans like, God never gives you more than you can handle, which I actually ultimately metaphysically believe is true, but it takes a lot of interpretation to figure out what that actually ultimately means. It's not something I would fling at anybody who is going through something terrible. And here's one that I don't know, it just gets to me. You got this. Sometimes I don't got it, and I want to say, how about you help me? And then I might got this. Or they start sentences with that dreadful combination of words, at least, right? At least you, oh my God. And they do end runs around you and your pain and their own pain. It's not meant to be hurtful. It is meant, in fact, to be just the opposite. But it's an anxious attempt to construct a bubble of safety around their own psyches. And it doesn't work. If it works for you, let me know. But here are the elements of toxic positivity. Because, of course, positive thinking in and of itself is not toxic. But here are the qualities of toxic positivity. It involves dismissing negative emotions and responding to distress with false reassurances rather than empathy. It's going to be fine. That's not being with someone where they are. And this is why pastoral caregivers have training in checking in so that we can keep remembering how to respond from the empathic. Toxic positivity comes from feeling uncomfortable with negative emotions. It is often well-intentioned, but it can cause alienation and a feeling of disconnection. Like when somebody says, you got this, and I just feel like, ugh, I needed you to just hear me. The most important antidote to toxic positivity is presence. Making room for what is. Companioning each other in our truths. Building capacity to abide in the ambiguity, the lack of control, fear, pain. We don't always got this. Sometimes we need help. But there is also that opposite pole of chronic negativity, and that's also a block to honesty and authenticity and reality. Chronic negativity is a block to creativity, possibility, and joy. Like sometimes when people will start laughing in the midst of just a terrible circumstance, and somebody is like, you shouldn't be laughing right now. I don't know, maybe they're finding the ridiculousness in it, and their spirits are actually light. It's a very dangerous energy, chronic negativity, when cultivated in community, and it can be contagious during vulnerable times. As Rinpoche Yongey writes during one of his moments of returning to self and returning to his breath, each sensation is temporary, each breath temporary. The planet is changing. My monasteries are changing. The whole universe is changing. Chronic negativity wants to tell a story that something that is changing, which is everything, is wrong, scary, a problem. We used to. I remember when we used to. And rather than remaining present to what is, where might arise a sense of peace, possibility, relief, even joy, negative minds walk into a room, interpret what they see from a point of comparison with what they know, how things have been, or what they think should be, and they're inflexible in that, and they deem it sad, wrong, troubled. There's a problem here. So how do we create a land of peace, openness, and presence where we have more capacity for reverence and well-being? I think the key quality to embrace is what I would call encouragement. I recommend this word because just saying it creates a physical sensation for me of open-heartedness. And I hope for you, encouragement in courage, but also that beautiful root, cœur in French, the heart, courage, heart, and Latin, cor, heart. So courage is located in the heart. Encouragement is to enhearten each other. Beautiful calling to hearten each other, to hearten the world. Rebecca Solnit wrote a wonderful book about communities that arise during disasters called A Paradise Built in Hell. And she talks about what she calls being thrown into an intensely absorbing present following a Central California earthquake that hit near her home in 1989. To create the most collective well-being today, we must also abide in our own intensely absorbing present. As she writes, a sense of immersion in the moment and solidarity with others caused by the rupture in everyday life. So the rupture can cause solidarity. If we do this and remain in the moment honestly, and with enough heart to stand with the pain and to remain open to possibility, we may find ourselves surprised to experience together what Solnit says is almost enjoyment, but for which we do not even have a language. What we can experience, she says, is a condition graver than happiness, in which the wonderful comes wrapped in the terrible, joy in sorrow, courage in fear. What a great work there is. What a worthy project and aim to encourage each other to live from the core, the cœur, a strong, grounded, and wise center land between the poles of toxic positivity, good vibes only, and chronic negativity, bad news only. It is a good land where we can abide well and do good things with great heart. Amen.